Episode 2, Deconstructed. Today, guys, we are talking about something very similar to last week, but this one's got a little twist on it. We're talking about the Branch Davidians, led by none other than David Koresh. But when he was born, he went by a different name. Jimmy?
Vernon?
Vernon Howell. Vernon Howell?
I think, Howell. Yeah, Vernon Howell.
Vernon Howell, if we're wrong, correct us. But
Out of Houston, Texas.
born in Houston, Texas, to a 14-year-old mother.
14 years old.
14 years
Her name was
old.
Bonnie, so her high school sweetheart got her pregnant at 14 and then dipped. So he had the baby. He found another girl that he thought looked better, and then he dipped. And obviously the baby was, as we know, David Koresh. So
Old Vern, he was born into a single mother family, and quickly after his actual biological father ditched him, although he saw him a few times, I think, when he was younger, like a few though.
Yeah,
it's kind of like
not much. He wasn't really present.
Yeah. His mother got remarried to another idiot who that only lasted for 2 years, and that guy would hit David.
Yeah, and David, you got to think David was like a young boy. This is before he's even 6 years old.
4 or 5.
We're talking about the time that he's like really young. And David basically said as he was older that he was beaten black and blue, was his exact quotes. Which who knows like how bad he was really beaten at that young, black and blue. But yes, so stepdad abused him quite a bit. So he got abused, and then his mom finally ended the marriage, and then she married a different guy when he was about 6. And I think that guy was a little better than David. But he had a lot of abuse when he was younger, which I'm sure traumatized him in a lot of different ways. Because imagine your mom is married to a different man, and you're so young you can't defend your mother, but he may be beating you and your mom, and you're witnessing it, and you feel powerless because there's not much you can do in that situation. That would traumatize you.
Dang, dude.
That would traumatize you because you want to protect your mom. You don't know your dad. You don't really know what it is to be a man, but every man has like the natural instinct to protect women, especially your mom, right?
Yeah.
And yourself, and you can't protect either one. So you're so powerless at that age. So that would traumatize someone.
Dude, that's a great, yeah. So from a young age, he felt powerless.
Yeah.
Which is kind of a trend we're seeing with these guys.
Mm-hmm.
With Jim Jones, who we covered last week. I watched that video too. To David Koresh, kids who grew up in broken households, the parents, just unstable relationship represented. Kids who felt powerless, lonely, they didn't get attention, was not put their way.
Yeah.
They felt like they got no attention, which is kind of interesting.
Yeah. I mean, it kind of puts you up at a place where you're trying to get gratification and acceptance from people, but you don't really know how to. And with David Koresh, he had, a new father that came in, but he had already had all that trauma from the young ages that he probably bottled up and suppressed and kind of forgot about. And so, although his mom said that he was very intelligent, he had like a speech impediment. Growing up, he was like a good fisherman. He was a handyman. He was really good with his hands and building stuff. But in the classroom, he wasn't that good, and he was falling behind. And he had a speech impediment, which at that age, you have a speech impediment. Kids are making fun of you, and they put him in special needs class. He had dyslexia, and the amount of not being like at that point, you feel like a reject. You're that young, you don't really know who you are, and you've had heavy abuse, and now you're getting emotionally abused at school because kids are just going to pick on other kids oftentimes. And so they gave him a lot of nicknames that he obviously did not like. They put him in special needs class, which was tough for him, which is really another example too of how, not to branch into this too much, but our school system is very flawed, and it's really built to cater to females above males in a lot of situations, because you're taught to sit down and take this test and listen for an extended period of time. And oftentimes young boys struggle with doing that because they're disruptive in class and they're doing other things. But that's just because men and women, they're hardwired different. So he was a very intelligent boy, but he struggled in school.
Very intelligent.
because school kind of measures a certain amount of intelligence that not everyone has. Although a lot of people, I believe, are intelligent in their own way. Everybody's intelligent in their own way. School will cater to certain people that are more book smart, that you would say. When other people, like, he was good with his hands. He liked to be a fisherman. He was really good at that stuff.
Yeah.
But he still struggled in that environment.
Yeah, I mean, I can relate to that. Like when I was little, I think a lot of young boys can relate. Like when you're young, a lot of men can relate to that because, dude, when you're a little boy, you have so much energy, and you just want to go outside and just go run. That's all you want to do. You just go run out. You just want to. You're looking out the window, and you're being lectured about something stupid. You just want to go outside, man.
And the bad thing is now they will medicate those kids.
Yeah.
I was one of those kids, to be honest with you.
ADHD?
And yeah, where you're just like constantly, you want to be outside playing, you want to be doing other stuff, and they'll medicate them. And now, the kid's doing a lot better, but the kid's fully medicated. He's not really himself. And so I think that's a very negative thing. But regardless of that, not to get into that part of it too deep, he was rejected at that age. He really started getting into the Bible. His family were Seventh-day Adventists. So he was going to church at the Seventh-day Adventist, and he was obsessed with the Bible at that time. Just reading it in and out, just constantly reading the Bible, like trying to just soak it all in. And he would actually listen to sermons and would just
intently
and try to copy the whole sermons, just so that way he could beat his speech impediment. So if he learned the sermons completely, he would just watch and mimic them so he could beat his speech impediment. He was memorizing all of Psalms and all of Proverbs, like literally the whole books, memorizing them. And we're talking about pages and pages and pages and pages and pages of the Bible that he was just memorizing.
That's crazy.
He was obsessed with it.
He ended up memorizing, I think, most of the Bible by the time he came across.
Which the question I have is, if he had such a desire for learning the Scripture, how could he get so far off the? How could he turn into what he was, like what we're going to get into? That is what blows my mind of this whole story. It's like he was diving into the Scripture, and from the outside looking in, seeking God, which I think there's something very profound in that. That even if you read the Bible and stuff with the wrong intentions, it can mess you up.
This is where I think he's different from Jim Jones. I think Jim Jones, even from a young age, all he wanted was just power and control. I think David Koresh was more of he didn't do well in school because the system wasn't good for him. But whenever he really was passionate about something, he honed in.
And so that's why I believe that sometimes the school system will fail a lot of people, because it tells them what they need to be focused on, what they need to be enjoying, what they need to be passionate about. And that might not be everybody's passion. It might have something completely different.
Bro, do you know how many guys I know our age who still struggle to believe that they are intelligent at all because they got C's in school? Like, seriously.
I was that guy for the longest. I thought I wasn't intelligent for the longest time. And people will try to tell you that you're not intelligent. I would never accept that, because everybody's intelligent just in their own way.
Yeah.
We all have passions and dreams and different things that God's installed in us that are very intelligent.
Yeah.
It's just whether people are going to be able to appreciate what that actually is or not. And it doesn't really matter if they do or not. But regardless, at that time, David, he was struggling with a lot of different things, and started really getting into the Bible, Seventh-day Adventist, and drops out of school, 17 years old, becomes a carpenter, which is ironic. As we're going to get into things, he becomes a carpenter.
Oh, that's ironic.
Yeah, very ironic as we dive into this story more so. He gets a girl pregnant and she's 15 when he's 19.
So at 19 years old, he gets an underage girl pregnant.
15 years old, gets her pregnant.
Gets her pregnant. Was she the pastor's daughter?
That's what I've heard. There's been a couple different things that I've read on that, but I believe she was the pastor's daughter, or at some point in time, he told the pastor's daughter that he was supposed to marry his 15-year-old daughter, underage daughter.
Yeah.
Which did not go over well at all.
That was a life-changing event for him, actually.
Yeah. He believed the best thing to do after he got the girl pregnant was to marry her. That was what God wanted. And it's almost like at that time, he actually wasn't what he became. he was in some areas like seeking God's will in
I
some
think so.
senses. In some senses, like he's like, well, I got this girl pregnant. The right thing to do is marry her. And outside looking in, that is the right thing. However, she's 15. You're 19. So when he was coming up to the people in the church and saying, hey, like I feel like the right thing to do is marry her, they were like, no, the right thing to do is not to marry this 15-year-old girl.
Yeah.
Right now. That's actually not the right thing to do. And he was very conflicted by that part of it.
He studied the scriptures so much. I think he truly believed what he was preaching and what he lived out. I think,
But
you know,
I think so. Right at that time was when I think things took a turn because he was going to the elders in the church and saying what he believed from the scriptures, like the right thing for me to do is marry her. And they were all disagreeing with him. And at that time was when he was like, why don't we have any prophets that can actually speak to us and give us advice now? Like that I can come to and they can give me advice. Like, and so he's constantly going back and forth. Like we should have prophets. We should have people coming and like speaking on behalf of God and different things of that nature. And that's when, because I think at that time he felt rejected again.
yeah.
They were disagreeing with him and he felt rejected. He's like, no, I've studied the scriptures. I know this is the right thing to do. We should have prophets. Why don't we have prophets? The elders don't agree with him. So eventually he's excommunicated from the church.
From the Seventh-day Adventist, right?
He's excommunicated, which I'm not going to lie to you. I go to a Christian church. I don't know how you have to say some wild stuff to get excommunicated from a church.
Yeah.
At this, at this time.
At
like
it's 20 years old, right?
Yeah, it's tough to get excommunicated
on,
from a church. I don't know how you get excommunicated from a church. You got to be saying some outlandish thing and leading people astray.
He was headstrong.
Yeah. So at that time was when he found the Branch Davidians.
Well, so the girl he got pregnant, her father told him, "You can never see my daughter or your child ever again."
Yeah.
So he never saw that kid ever again. And that actually was the final cherry on top, which is what led him to the Branch Davidians, which is an offset of the Seventh-day Adventists. Technically, it's a sect of the Seventh Days.
A little bit more of a cultish sect, if you would.
Prophetic based, apocalyptic based.
They follow one person, which at that time when he first went there was a lady named Lewis Ridden?
Roden. R-O-D-N.
Lewis Roden. Yeah. Lewis Roden. She was about, she was in her 60s and she was their prophet who they followed. And so he found his home over there with them and they accepted him. And they believed a lot of the stuff that he believed from his interpretation of scripture and different things that there should be a prophet that you follow, which was Lewis. And that's when things got a little bit interesting because him and Lois, their relationship got a little. They started basically being together in a sexual way. So he's about 20, she's in her 60s.
That cougar, dude.
So I'm not gonna lie to you. I don't know. I don't fully understand all these cult situations. I don't know what I would be thinking if my leader starts having my 60-something-year-old leader is having like sexual relationships with like young at that time. I mean, he's a boy. Let's call it young, 20 years old. Let's call it for what it is.
Like, what's going on here?
Like, yeah, it's something weird.
Well, okay, so David comes into this sect of the Branch Davidians. He was really into music. That's a key part to all this too. In high school, he was a musician, and he loved playing the guitar. He could sing. He loved being in front of a crowd, and he did it through music. And that was a huge part of his story. Was he felt like the revivals were going to happen through New Age rock and roll.
Mm-hmm.
That was a big. So he comes into the Branch Davidians, as kind of this hippie, headstrong guy who can play music, who's good looking. And to add to what Jimmy was saying, Lois Roden was the wife of Benjamin Roden, who started the Branch Davidians. So she is.
Was he passed away at that time?
Yeah, he died. So she was just carrying on what her husband was doing. But yeah, this is when David starts to kind of make his mark. He starts to preach and would just say the entire Psalms.
Yeah,
just like say it to him.
And like he was so like full of himself. I remember one of the quotes that they have because there's like videos of things like that he said, and they've got like video evidence of different sermons and stuff he had. And one of the things he's like, I can say all the Psalms and I can quote them out. And a lot of people are very impressed by that. Like he's kind of like that, like, hey, I can do this and that. Like I know a lot of people are they're pretty impressed with that. So he's a little bit, you can tell, like getting a little bit full of himself. So here's where things get a little weird. Why do I keep forgetting her name? Is it Roden?
Roden. Yeah.
Roden. Towards the end of her life, she starts telling everybody that David Koresh is the prophet. He's the one they need to start following. And she starts pointing the leadership to David Koresh. And that's when things went south with her son.
Really south. What this also revealed is David Koresh, as you guys can tell, since a young age, had a sex problem. The dude was a sex addict, having sex with underage girls since he was a teenager.
You think he was sexually abused when he was younger, which sprung any of that?
Man, that's a
great... He says he was abused, but he doesn't really specify how. He just says until he was black and blue, but I don't know, man.
That's one could point to that for sure.
Yeah,
because he was a sex addict for sure, dude. And you guys will see how bad it got. I mean,
oh, dude, this story is getting worse. Wait just wait till we get to where we're about to go.
I mean, he had a problem, like a huge problem. Like that's what I think is the through line is he had a sexual addiction, right? So Lois Roden's son George, right? George, he's like, wait a second, I'm the son of the guy who founded the Branch Davidians. I'm next in line to be the leader. If you go watch videos of George Roden, the dude looks like a criminal. Like he just looks sus.
Yeah. But he was envious. He thought that he deserved to be the prophet.
Super envious.
Which is let's just stop it there. The fact that they're having a fight on who should be the prophet should probably tell you, neither one of them are prophets. People don't decide who's the prophet. God does.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, let's just stop there. It blows my mind with some of these cults how they like humans don't decide who's the prophet.
Yeah, I know.
So
it's crazy. So they kick. So once Lois dies, right? George, he kicks David and his followers out. It's like 100 people, but he kicks them out because they live in like buses, like a dystopian community for like 2 years. Because that's how he builds up his following against George.
David and George thinks he should be the rightful heir. David also thinks he should be the prophet of the Branch Davidians, right? After Lois Roden dies. Okay. And so they get into it. Basically, yes, they kick him out. David goes to Israel with his son and his 14-year-old wife. He's in his 20s at this point. He has a 14-year-old wife at this time. Okay. He goes to Israel, then he comes back, and long story short, he actually goes to, a lot of people don't realize this, he goes to trial for attempted murder because of what happened with George. They had a shootout in 1984. Okay. So he goes to trial for attempted murder before any of the other stuff that we come to learn about in Waco happens. So he comes back, and they do see him as the prophet. They accept him as the prophet of the Branch Davidians in Mount Carmel. Okay. And at this time, he's telling people that he's a prophet and that God has given him the secrets to Revelations. There's 7 seals in Revelations that it speaks about, and that God has given them the secrets to unlock the 7 seals to give to the people. Now, rule of any cult. Rule of any cult. If somebody tells you that God has given them the secrets to unlock it and they've just given it to one person to unlock it, probably a cult.
Bad news.
Probably a cult.
Bad news.
That is a cult. But anyways, so that's what he was preaching, and he would sometimes give 12-hour long sermons. I mean, he was gifted with obviously his words, which is pretty incredible because he went from having a speech impediment when he was younger to giving 12-hour sermons, which is kind of nuts.
But just like Jim Jones, they would give these long sermons and just, dude, it's all attention. They're just getting fed attention.
Fed attention. He's like, you don't realize he's up there and they're like, wow, he knows so much about the Bible, but like he's literally up there just getting dopamine from like 12 hours of people just listening to me and being so impressed with me. Oh my gosh.
Dude, that's
12 hours of just, wow, this is incredible.
Wow, people are looking at me.
Do you think that's how he was thinking?
Oh yeah. So to give you some more context too, the reason there was a shootout is because George realized that this little community that David had built out after he got kicked out, literally a bunch of school buses and tents, it was starting to gain traction. And George Roden basically said, "Okay, David, if you think you're a true prophet, raise someone from the dead." So George, according to David, dug up a corpse so David could raise it. But David was like, "Wait a second. We could report this guy because that's illegal. You can't dig up a corpse." So they go to get proof, and when they go to get proof, there's a shootout. That's actually why there's a shootout.
That is nuts.
Yeah,
that's nuts.
So that's actually why they went to trial, because people were getting shot, and it was an attempted murder, but there was no proof, right? So, but the big reason that the Branch Davidians moved on from George to David is because a year or so later, George killed somebody with an axe for saying that he was going crazy and he shouldn't be the leader of the Branch Davidians. George killed someone, and so he was put in a psychiatric ward for being crazy. And he kind of, you look at pictures of the guy, I think he was crazy. But that is when David Koresh, that's when he really moved in.
Yeah.
And that's when he got full control.
Yeah. So he started taking over, was giving them all these sermons. And at that point in time was when he started revealing himself and was known as what he was called, the sinful Messiah. And so basically he believed he was the Messiah. His followers believed he was the Messiah, but he wasn't the Messiah in the way Jesus was. Jesus was the perfect Messiah. He was the sinful Messiah. So he was the Messiah that had sin, so that way he could relate even more so to the people than Jesus,
dude.
right? So like I know what it's like to sin because I've committed the sin. So like he was that Messiah, which doesn't make a whole lot of sense. So when he's giving these 12-hour sermons and he's doing all this stuff, he's literally cussing, speaking perverse language, like saying some like borderline crazy stuff. And at this point, you start to probably see him stray even more so from the actual Bible and start just teaching more of his own, what he believes God's revealed to himself.
Dude,
the fact that he's unlocking these mysteries and revelation of the seven seals and different things like that, and people are eating it up. They're believing it. And so this is when the time he starts doctrinating a lot of his followers, and he has them convinced. He's saying, hey, listen, some of the Armageddon of these seven seals, the unlocking of these seven seals, what it actually means is we're going to get into a fight with the U.S. government. And when it starts, it's going to be a fight, and we're going to go up with an angelic army and then come down, and that's going to be Armageddon. We're going to take over from that point on. That he had them convinced that was the unlocking of some of the seven seals of Revelation. So he had them basically prepping for an Armageddon.
Dude.
Literally prepping for an Armageddon.
He was conniving, bro.
Now, but he got into a little bit of...
Dude.
He has a lot of people living with him. Now, obviously,
here we go.
There's a lot of expenses that come with a lot of people living with you.
Mm-hmm.
And at that point in time, they're tight on money. He learned from someone else that, hey, you can actually like make a lot of money on like firearms and like selling firearms. He would go to auctions, get these firearms, store them up, and that's how they were trying to make some money.
Mm-hmm.
Now, also during this time, this is probably, to me, the craziest part of David Koresh in the story. He convinced his followers that his seed, his sperm, his semen, had the light. It was only... all the women in the world belong to David Koresh.
That's crazy.
He convinced them. Okay?
Yeah.
So you have to think, there's a lot of husbands and wives in this sect of the Branch Davidians. He convinced all the husbands that their seed was dark and they were not allowed to use it. That means masturbation, having sexual relations with their own wife. They had to abstain from all that. However, David Koresh should have sexual relations with their wife and with all the girls, including young girls.
Young.
So he literally convinced him. Now, some people left at that time. That's one thing I will say. David Koresh he wasn't imprisoning them like a Jim Jones. He did allow people to leave. You know, they want to leave. So some people left, but a lot of people stayed while David Koresh enjoyed their wives and children. Bro. Their wives and children.
He had 14 kids from 14 different women, right?
Yeah.
Okay, dude, what would you do if Koresh is like, yo, Jimmy? So I gotta tell you something. Look, now on, Lauren's mine.
Here's the thing about it, man. Comes a day in every man's life when you got to make hard decisions, and leaders do that. All right. Now, this is something I don't want to do.
Yeah. That was the thing, is he didn't want to do it.
I don't
right?
want to do this, but God's telling me, right?
He would say that for real.
Listen, I don't want to do this, but God is telling me.
That's for real.
And here's the thing about it. These people were convinced he was God in the flesh.
Yep.
They believed he was God in the flesh.
Yep.
So when they would all stay up and have a card night, and they're like a big old family, and to a degree, they'd stay up and play cards or whatever. And David Koresh is picking one girl to go upstairs with him at the end of the night, and the girls are actually hoping that it's them. My wife, if you're in the compound, your wife is hoping. I hope God, who they think is God, David Koresh, takes me with them tonight, so that way they can experience a one-on-one experience with God.
Dude,
I'm not even kidding. That's how corrupt the followers were, like in their beliefs. They were excited to have sexual relations with David Koresh if they could. It was an honor to be doing that because they believed they were getting a one-on-one experience with God himself.
Sex cult.
That's nuts. That is absolutely bonkers. How do you get that from the Bible? Like I'm baffled, so baffled how that is like. How do you convince people that? What was he just ripping out pages in the scripture and writing them with a Sharpie and giving them out to people? Like
he might have.
Like, did he have his own made up Bible? Like, how do you go from reading the whole Bible to then justifying that and convincing people that you are God, so that way you can get your sexual addiction, morph it into something just absolutely disgusting? I don't get that. I genuinely don't.
I really don't understand how. With all these cults, I said this last video too. In those situations, people are so down the rabbit hole that they will believe whatever's said. He could have said anything, man.
It's tough because a lot of times what you find in a lot of those cults is people that, in a lot of ways, grew up the same way David Koresh did. They don't have a home. They don't have acceptance. And so you're getting a very gullible, susceptible person. For example, there's one story of a guy who David Koresh and one of the leaders in the sect walked up to him. He was in Guitar Center. He was holding drums in this. And he walked up and said something very profound to the guy. To me, the guy, listening to the guy say it, when I was reading about this, like, it didn't sound profound to me. The guy was like, you don't realize that, like, every move you make, like, God has like a plan for everything you're doing. And you have no idea, like, every one of your moves is already like calculated, and that God has a plan for you. And basically, he asked him if he was a drummer, because David Koresh was big on rock and roll. And he was like, basically, you're coming with us. Takes this guy from working in Guitar Center,
join the band,
pulls him out, and now he's at Mount Carmel. So that's the kind of guy you're getting, the guy that's at Guitar Center working, and now he's joining the cult because some guy said like one sentence that blew his mind that wasn't even that crazy, and now he's following him and abstaining from sex for the rest of his life while he takes all the women. You know how crazy you got to be to believe, like, have a mortal man convince you that your seed is dark. Therefore, I am going to take your wife. Don't worry, I'll fix it. I'll take your wife and put my light seed in her, so that way we can, that's the only way to do it. That's what God says to do.
It's what he says, man.
And people are like, yeah, I mean, that sounds valid, yeah, for sure.
Yeah, it makes sense to me.
That makes sense. I mean, yeah. You got all the boxes.
You have fun with her tonight. I'll be.
Hey, y'all just let me know if y'all need anything here. All right, all right. I'm here to be a servant.
Yeah,
I got a servant's heart.
Yeah. You guys let me know if you get hungry, thirsty.
If you need to rehydrate, bring in some electrolytes. We'll make sure you're good to go. Yeah, got some Cialis actually on the counter if you need some. Yeah, around 2 or 3.
A key to this as well is whenever David took over the compound over George Roden, Mount Carmel sits on 70 acres that the Branch Davidians owned, I think, right?
Yeah.
And so Mount Carmel was the main building in the compound, I believe.
Which is nuts because they still have that to this day. The
It's
Branch
still
Davidians are still alive to this day, and they're at Mount Carmel.
Yeah, Mount Carmel, the building itself is still there, right? Like,
well, no, I'm pretty sure they've probably destroyed that part of it, but they have they're on the land still. That's nuts. That's nuts.
It's nuts. So
they're still alive to this day, believing the same
That's just nuts, bro.
Yeah.
So back then, this would have been the 80s at this point. David Koresh realized, like Jimmy said, man, we got land, we got buildings, man, we got hundreds of people. They need food, water, they need resource, they need diapers. How are we going to do this? And firearms. And funny enough, they bought, I think, a firearms store, right? When it went out of business.
Mm-hmm.
We're talking thousands, but thousands of weapons. And from the year he bought it to the year he started selling it, like firearms doubled in value or something.
Mm-hmm.
So he was bringing in like good money.
They're bringing in good money. Yeah. So here's kind of how things sparked. David was obviously doing some inappropriate and illegal things with how he was treating the women there, because you got to think a lot of these girls weren't even of age. They were training these girls when they're younger, like their daughters, that like your goal should be to try to be David's wife.
Be with David.
Be with David. Crazy. Be with David. It's so ironic how all these cults, all these different sects of different things that spiral up, they all have to do with multiple wives and like somebody benefiting from the power of like having sex with like all the women.
Yeah,
it's just weird how that goes. But so basically at that time, you got to think that stuff's happening. So there was actually some, not really sure how, but there was an Australian family that was in Branch Davidian. They left during this whole situation that was going on with David Koresh when he started getting into his sexual
frenzy.
Yeah, when he started kind of going off the walls. They went to the American embassy and basically were like, "Hey, listen, this is what's happening over there. Like, y'all need to investigate this and send it over." So that's exactly what they did. They investigated for basically child safety over there, and they went and investigated at Mount Carmel. And the thing is, when they went through their investigations, everybody talked so good of Dave Koresh, they didn't really get any dirt on him at all. So there was nothing that they saw. However, when they were there, they noticed the firearms. In some way, shape, or form, they were tipped off about the firearms, which they then ended up telling ATF. And ATF was already, David Koresh was already on their radar. He had already made a name for himself in Waco, Texas, and they tipped him off. So at that point, that was when the ATF started doing research on the firearms issue.
So ATF, agriculture, we were talking about it.
Yeah.
What was the T?
Tobacco.
Agriculture, tobacco, and firearms. So they are federal agents, but they're not the big boys. This is kind of more on the local level, if that makes sense, but still a federal organization.
Yeah. They decide, we have enough on David Koresh. We are going to raid the place and we're going to arrest him. We're going to bring him in and we're going to get him for these firearms. The fact that he's, distributing firearms and different things of that nature. So that was the goal. So one Sunday morning, they decide they're going to do that. And in their mind, hey, it's going to be an element of surprise. We're going to surprise attack them. And they're not going to see it coming. It's going to be very easy. These are church-going people. They'll probably be praying in the corner. We'll go grab David Koresh. It'll be all over.
Yep.
Okay. So that's how it started. Now, they go and start planning this mission out there. So what they didn't know is there's a guy named Robert Rodriguez, and he was in the ATF undercover, but he was in the cult. Oh, so he was undercover. He was in the cult. Dang. And he was the one kind of giving all the spill on everything. So he's the main guy that like got the evidence to where they could raid the place.
Dang, dude.
Yeah, Robert Rodriguez. And what they didn't realize also was that he was, David Koresh had no clue that he was the one that was giving all the information until that day. Then he found out. And it's ironic because David Koresh found out and still looked at Robert and let him walk away free. Almost like he saw himself like Jesus saw Judas. Very weird.
100%.
Like he betrayed him, but he's like, I'll turn the other. Like he that was like his like Jesus moment. And you got to think also, David Koresh at this time is 33 years old. He's an ex-carpenter. I just showed you. They just had their Judas. The followers are like pointing all these similarities to him really being the Messiah. Like, they're like, yeah, he is who he says he is. I mean, come on, he was a carpenter. He's 33 when he's about to pass away. He turned the other cheek to Judas right there, Robert Rodriguez. Like, so long story short, there's a cameraman who comes, this guy's with the media.
Yeah.
And so they send their whole team with the media. The guy's about to go to church. He gets a call, and they're like, hey, you have to show up. There's going to be a raid over at Mount Carmel. The guy skips going to church, goes over there. They're like a couple streets down waiting. And he doesn't really know how to get to the actual Mount Carmel destination. So he's kind of sitting out waiting to get additional word. There's nobody out there. He sees a mailman go by. Okay. He says to the mailman, like, hey, just a small talk conversation. And he's like, do you know how to get to Mount Carmel, by the way? And the guy's like, yeah, why? He's like, oh, well, they're about to raid that place. The guy from the media tells him that. They're about to raid that place. We're going to make sure we get the footage of it. The mailman was one of the people. He was one of the Branch Davidians.
Dummy.
The guy goes instantly back.
Dummy.
And tells him, hey, we're about to get raided. Tells David Koresh, this place they're about to raid us. Now David Koresh tells his followers, what I told you was going to happen is happening.
Bring out the ARs.
So you got to think how all this plays out. He tells these people there's going to be an Armageddon. It's going to be with the government. We're going to be in a shootout. It's going to be a fight. Like, it's going to be an ultimate fight, and you have to fight. That's the will of God, is to fight these people. And he's preparing them that the unlocking of the 7 seals, he's been doing this months and months, if not years prior. The unlocking the 7 seals is going to be this exact situation that is now playing out.
Do you think he believed it, or do you think he was?
I think he convinced himself that it was true.
That's what I'm saying.
I think that he allowed the people to put him on such a pedestal that he believed everything he was saying was true. At this point in time, he's like, basically, hey, get the troops ready. Now, ATF knows that they've been tipped off. Robert Rodriguez is in there right beside David Koresh when he gets the news. He tells them he's tipped off. They know that they're tipped off. They know that David Koresh is ready. They're unstable. They have weapons. At this point, they have to decide what they're going to do.
Yep.
And so some of the guys are like, hey, we probably shouldn't be doing this. The whole reason we're doing this is for the element of surprise to get David Koresh. David Koresh is in the city half the time. We can just grab him from this. Like, there's so many other things we can do. And the leader was like, nah, we're going. Arm up. We're doing this thing. We're getting them. We're going to get them. So obviously David Koresh gets the news, and he lets Robert Rodriguez. At that time, he knows Robert Rodriguez is part of ATF, and he's not there on their behalf. And Robert Rodriguez fully thought he was going to get shot in the back of the head when he left. He left, and they let him go free.
They really did.
Yep.
You can look that up. They let him go free.
They let him go free.
Just like Judas.
Yep. And so ATF gets there, and they're ready. They said the last thing you heard was Dave Koresh come out, and somebody says, hey, there's women and children in here. And then nobody knows who shot first. There's a lot. This is where I'll say there's a lot of speculation. Nobody knows if it was ATF that shot first or the Branch Davidians. If you ask ATF, which is tough because you can't really ask any of the Branch Davidians at this point.
Whoops.
They say that ATF, they say that the Branch Davidians obviously shot first, which
they say Koresh shot first. Like, walked out there and was like, shot.
They just started, and then they just said at that point on, it was a war zone.
Dude, the thing is, I could see either side shooting first, though.
Yeah.
Like, I could literally see, oh, man, that's tough. It doesn't even matter, right? Because like you're saying, it becomes a actual war zone. A combat zone.
Yeah, and like a bunch of ATF got hurt. A bunch of Branch Davidians got hurt and died. Four died.
4 ATF
died.
6 Branch Davidians, right?
Yeah. And it was just a shootout. Just like absolute shootout.
Well, like a Call of Duty level. I know it sounds horrible to compare to that, but like it was like that.
Yeah.
Like shooting from like second floor rooftops. Like,
but here's the thing, it could have been avoided.
Absolutely.
That's the problem. So
absolutely.
The ATF, they could have handled that completely different, because at the end of the day, the whole reason that they were investigating this guy, everything like that they were doing, they weren't really a threat to, like, a life or death threat at that moment. They could have held back and re-strategized, and it would have saved lives, but they didn't.
It's a great point, dude.
Okay.
It's a great point.
So at that point in time, now you have this shoot-off. They're not coming out. They're not doing anything, and they're not cooperating. Now, throughout the time, they had somebody come in. So they brought in a negotiator who was just negotiating. I mean, they were negotiating with David Koresh all the time, trying to get people out. Now, here's the thing. a lot of the people in that building still didn't want to come out, even though they were surrounded by police force, gunfire, all this stuff, which
Yeah.
led to the 51. It was a 51 day. It was a 51 day standoff. The
50
FBI is involved at this point. Like 51 day standoff.
51 days, and according to FBI, the average standoff's like 6 to 8 hours. But this is actually a key part. So when it was reported on the news that ATF had that some of those guys had died, they switched them out, and this is where the FBI comes in. And there's actually it matters because the FBI comes in with more resources, but they have actual negotiators. They have FBI negotiators, and the problem was these guys are really good in hostile hostage situations because it was once the FBI came in, it was deemed a hostage situation.
Yeah.
But what the FBI, even the top dudes, what they weren't used to was David Koresh wanted them to believe what he was saying. He
Yeah.
was speaking from the Bible, and these guys are like, "We don't really know what to do with this guy."
Yeah.
You know, Armageddon has come. Like it's time, and like
Yeah.
you guys, you will be served your justice. And they're just like, "Look, you got women and children in there, right?" Like, and he's like, "Doesn't matter. Like this is part of the plan." And they're like,
But they did say for the next, so after that first shootout, for the next 3 days, and that's why I say like David Koresh, he's different than, he gave basically, he went around the whole Mount Carmel for 3 days. It was like, hey, who wants to leave? If you want to leave, like we'll get you out.
Yeah.
And so that's why like there's some traits in David Koresh where it's like he wasn't like the word. His followers just really believed at what he was saying. Like they were bought in. They were bought in.
He was trying to be kind of Jesus, like kind of a weird Jesus,
Like a very strange, like he was trying to, he miserably failed, but
but you think it was like a, hey, look, like you're free to go, or was it more like a, look, you can leave, but just know like you're gonna go against like the prophecy. You know what I mean? Was it more that?
I don't fully know. The way that they made it seem is like he was just like, yeah, you can leave, because I think a couple people did leave.
A couple did. Nine people left.
Well, they got a lot of kids out during this time during the standoff. So they did get like a lot of kids out, which is great. Like over 20 kids they got out. I think maybe 32 people in total.
Yeah.
During the standoff that they negotiated different things to get them out.
Yeah.
But during the standoff, FBI is like really trying to get some things done. Like, and each day that passes, they're getting more and more annoyed. And like more FBI is like, come on. Like each day is like more like, okay, these are people. Hey, do what we say. Like each day is like getting more like that. And then eventually, I think it just broke when they're like, no, we're the FBI. We're okay. We're done with this. We're not negotiating anymore. It's over. Today it's over. And during that whole time, they had snipers and all sorts of people. I mean, they had the building completely surrounded with tanks. They are playing like they have loud voltage speakers that are going just, I'm talking about like super loud speakers that are just constantly playing loud noise for like 51 days straight. Like they would play like a phone, like an alarm going off for like 2 days straight. Like that, all you hear is an alarm going off. They would play like a rabbit getting killed and like destroyed for like a whole day of just like constantly like sounds that are just make you restless.
Okay. How long do you think you could take that? If you're inside,
I'm out, bro. Hey, get me out of here.
I mean, you're sitting there just like staring up at the ceiling.
You telling me we don't have Wi-Fi?
Yeah.
You telling me we don't have Wi-Fi? And I can't put no headphones on. I can't. I gotta listen. I gotta listen to this alarm clock going off for the like. I can't. They're low on resources too. They probably don't have a ton of food in there.
Oh, the FBI took out the electricity too.
They no electricity. I mean, they're in there like struggling.
Dude, that sucks.
They don't got much to eat. They don't got much to drink, and
psychological warfare.
It's psychological warfare. And so there was a lot of debate on that. Like, hey, why would you? These people are already unstable. Why would you make them more mentally unstable by playing stuff like this for 2 and 3 days at a time? And I don't know if I fully agree with that, because the reality is,
you got kids in there, man.
Yeah, that's what's tough.
You got kids.
The biggest factor is the women and children that were a part of this. If it was just some terrorists in there that were like actually like a huge threat, they would have just destroyed that whole building. The problem is they're trying to save the kids. Okay.
Yeah.
So
yeah,
it's bad because this whole thing probably could have been avoided if the ATF just re-strategized getting David Koresh. They didn't. So things progress because the FBI is just losing they've had it. They're like, you know what? We're done with it. So they start taking the tanks, start bulldozing walls down, just start tearing this building up.
But what they were telling them the whole time, like, hey, we're bringing in a tank. Like, if you want to get out, get out.
Yeah.
Like,
Well, first they took like tear gas.
oh, that's key.
They put it into the place.
This is key, actually.
And they're like, hey, listen, we are putting, this is not an assault. We're going to put tear gas in there. Like, this is not an assault. Don't shoot. We're putting tear gas in there. Because, like, that was the day they were like, we're done. Like, we're done negotiating. Y'all are coming out. Throw tear gas in there. Nobody comes out when they put the tear gas in.
See, that's where
Nobody comes out. But
That's
you got to
crazy.
think, these people have been prepped for Armageddon. Okay? So they have masks and stuff down there. And a lot of people believe they're at the bottom bunker, so the tear gas wasn't even impacting them at all. So long story short, they're taking the tanks, they're bulldozing this building down, and basically during this time that they're tearing this, nobody comes out. The tear gas didn't work. They don't bring anybody out. They start tearing this building down. Nobody's coming out. There's no movement. There's no sign of anybody in this place. Okay. Then they see fire catch onto the building.
I'd be like, what? If I'm an FBI agent, I'm like, wait, what?
Yeah. So fire catches onto the building. Now, Branch Davidians, the people that survived, they say they didn't start the fire. The FBI swears they didn't start the fire. Matter of fact, one of the FBI, the sniper says he saw the wind blowing one way and the fire was over on this side. And then he saw a completely different part of the building that would have not been able to catch on fire from the other fire catch on fire.
Yep.
So somebody was literally setting this building on fire. It's just a matter of who was doing it.
Yep.
And here's when things get really crazy. The building is engulfed in flames, and people still aren't coming out.
Dude,
they're not coming out. Now, at the very end, a few people didn't make their way out of the building. Some of the people that you can hear their stories today. They made their way out of the building. There's one guy that says, one of the leaders, his last name was Martin. I can't remember his first name. He says, as you can hear, he's like, I could feel the singes of the fire burning my hair and my skin.
Yeah.
And I look over to one of the guys that was the leaders, and he's sitting there filling the fire. They have masks on, and he's just like, all right, I'm going to take my mask off. And he just sat there, and he just took it. He just died.
Oh, my gosh.
He just took it.
Crazy.
And the reality is, and I don't know about the kids. That's what's crazy. I don't know about the kids, but the reality is this. Those people in there could have got out. They chose to stay because they believed they were doing the will of God. They believed they were being martyrs. They followed this man to their grave. I mean, I guess if you're a man and you're letting this David Koresh guy have sex with your wife and your 15-year-old daughter, that you'll die for him too.
True.
I mean, it makes sense, but like,
it does. Yeah.
Can you imagine? You're going down to your death because you believe you're doing the will of God because you just didn't cooperate with the authorities. Can you imagine you're dying with your kids? You're letting your children they're in there too. You're letting your children die.
That's what, if those people did survive, they'd be in jail for life.
Now, they go back and forth. The survivors of the Branch Davidians claim that the FBI started the fire. The FBI completely, obviously, denies that completely. And I don't fully buy that either.
I don't buy that.
I think they started the fire and they're like, you know what? We'd rather just be martyrs and let's all just die than.
Well, because that's how the story's supposed to go, though.
That's how the story's supposed to go. Because we're going to die and then we're going to come back in an angelic army and take all these guys down. Because we're the chosen ones. We have the Messiah, David Koresh. We're the chosen ones. And let's go ahead and kill ourselves so we can grab our army and come down. And newsflash, they never came back down. Never came back down. Yeah, newsflash, they did not, in fact, come back down.
We're still waiting on that one.
Now, you still have, what's crazy is there's still people alive today that believe they are coming back. They believe that David Koresh is coming back.
It's just
nuts to me. It's nuts to me.
Just want to slap him, dude.
I mean, it's just like, it's nuts.
Slap some sense into him, bro.
It's nuts, man.
So once the flames really started going, FBI agents sent in. They started getting in there.
Well,
Trying
here's
to
what's
find it.
nuts. While the building's burning down, the sniper of the FBI, the building's burning down, and he says he hears like a build shooting at him, and he says that basically one of the people inside that building that's about to get burned alive, one of the last things he was trying to do was take down the sniper. Like that's the last thing he thought about was like, I'm going to take down the sniper as I'm about to burn alive. And he's like, that's dedication. I mean, these people were dedicated,
Dedication.
dedicated, nuts.
By the time I think the fire, did they put out the fire and then go check on find the bodies? I think so.
Yeah,
I think once most of the building was destroyed.
they said like you could see just like it did look like Armageddon.
Yeah,
Just burnt Bible pages that were sitting at the bottom were just like
fluttering
flying up in the
around.
air. You know, you see like obviously remains of bodies.
So in one of the main rooms there, they found what was it, 70 some people?
Yeah,
Um, who
it's where they were
all
all hiding away from the gas in the bottom.
they were all hiding away,
They're
and
bunkered away.
most of them had gunshot. I mean, were shot in the head, right?
Yeah, I think they just now David Koresh, they found him shot in the head. It's
Ironic.
always it's always how that works, right?
Bro,
They always find how that works. Like it's always the leader that gets shot somehow. Whether he did it, you don't know if he did it, if somebody else did it, who knows? But like David Koresh that's how they found him.
so do you think that like as the flames were engulfing them,
I
he
think
was
they were
like,
in so much pain they're just like I mean, that's probably what I would do.
kids too, right? Didn't
They gave them every opportunity to come out, man. It's just crazy. The kids, man, you just get the kids out.
51 days, dude.
You imagine, man, some of these kids are like babies. There's babies in there. There's little kids.
Well, that's all these FBI negotiators were wanting.
That's
They
all
got
they
to the
wanted.
point. They're like,
Yeah.
just give us the kids, and then we'll take y'all on. Just give us the kids.
Unfortunately, they did get to save some people. But it's just crazy because like they even like I've listened to interviews from the sniper that was like on site there with the FBI, and he's like, one day like David Koresh just came out during that 51-day standoff, and he's like, I had a thought in my like I had my scope literally on his face, and I thought about like I could end this whole thing right now. I'll go to prison for life, but I
Oh,
could,
would he?
yeah, because I mean he basically
Manslaughter.
he didn't get authorized to be able to do
Yeah.
like you're not there's you shouldn't do that. That's not what their goal was.
Right.
But like he's like I could have ended all this thing and saved those people. He's like I think about that every single day.
What would you do if you're that sniper?
I probably wouldn't have done it, and then the same way he's regretting it now, I probably would regret it later. Because like if hindsight's always 20/20, the realistic thing, if he would have done it right there, he would have went to jail for life, in prison for life, but he would have saved all those people.
Saved all those people. Saved the kids, especially.
Actually, I don't know.
I think he was saved.
Actually, I don't know if he would have, because I think that they would have believed that he would have went down as a martyr, and they would have doubled down the followers. So I don't even think he would have saved him as much as he thinks he would.
Well, what a concern was for one of the top FBI guys was that David Koresh was literally going to pull the 3-day resurrection. He was going to have all his people die. He was going to crawl into some little hole. Then 3 days later, pop back up and be like, I resurrected. And then all the 7-day Adventists were going to, from all ends of the earth, were going to be like, he is truly the Messiah.
Oh my gosh.
I mean, they were, dude. But see, if you're the FBI, you're dealing with a guy like that who's unhinged. You kind of, at some point, you got to be like, okay, like we have to use force. We have to, because he is.
But like,
You know?
oh man, it's so bad because like, what do you do? That's a tough situation. Like, who's to say like, okay, you just let them do their own thing. They're on Mount Carmel, leave them alone. But like, how do you let them do their own thing when you know that there's abuse with children going on over there? How do you let them do their own thing above the firearms? There's abuse of children over there.
That's the thing.
That's the main thing. It's like, but also there's you have no evidence because every time you go check it out, they make it seem like everything's all good and dandy over there. I mean, the main thing I'm fascinated with is number one, how does somebody like David Koresh start from where he was to where he was obsessed with the scriptures and end to his finishing point? And number two, how do so many people buy into a fact of a man that not only has no reason, not only is in no way, shape, or form capable of backing up the claims that he says he's claiming, but also the scripture that you've been reading, it's completely defying that scripture.
Yeah.
It's completely like contradicting the scripture.
Yeah. Well, one of the negotiators was talking to him during the 51 days, and he's like, "Look, man, like we just want to get the kids out." And David was like, "Until I finish writing how the seven seals are going to be
Yeah.
prophesied or something
Yep.
or interpreted, like no one's getting out or something, or like I can't leave. Like I got to
Yeah.
do this." It's like, what?
Yeah, like I believe he was raised up so high by the people around him, and he had so much damage and baggage from when he was a kid, so much reject that like he genuinely believed he was who he was. He convinced himself too that he was the sinful Messiah, and somehow he allowed the scripture that he read to get perversed in a way to where like he was literally able to change it.
You asked the big question. How does a kid like that become the man he becomes, right?
Yeah,
I think rejection is probably a big key to it. You know what I mean?
the part though that I think is like I agree, but the part that I think is the most fascinating thing to dissect is like if he was actually reading the scripture, reading about Jesus' life, like what made him want to what made him say that I'm going to have sex with all the women and I'm the like where do you get that from? Like where do you get that,
dude?
And that's where
Yeah.
that's why when some people's like, well, when you start convincing people, I have a revelation that God gave me that I'm willing to share with you guys. That's why that is a terrible thing, because then it allows for people to start using that to their authority. It's like, okay, well, actually, outside of the Bible too, God did tell me this as well. So like now it's taking all the focus off the scripture and making it on what this man, which is really just his own, what he wants in his own power, like feeding that part of it. But then again, I say that, but also God did speak to a lot of prophets in the Old Testament. Moses, God spoke to.
Oh,
You know what I mean? God did speak to one man plenty of times, but there's obviously a lot of differences there. But it's just interesting.
oh, I think he had a dream in his own head that God did speak to him. Don't get me wrong. I think he had something that he had a revelation. But I think it all starts from when he was 19, 20, and he became convinced that he was some type of chosen one. That's where the root of it is, right?
Yeah.
Because once you convince yourself that you are some type of prophet or chosen person, then anything that you experience in your life, you believe in it.
But I don't think he convinced himself then that he was the chosen. I just believe that at that point in time, he convinced himself that that there had to be a prophet.
And
it would only make more sense to be a prophet. And then when he met Lois Roden, they gassed his head up enough to where he was convinced it was him.
Yeah, that's right.
You know what I mean?
That is the Branch Davidian beliefs.
Yeah,
it is a prophet.
And he's like thinking back, like, shoot, I did drop out of school and become a carpenter.
Yeah.
You know, I was rejected. Oh,
yeah.
I am the Messiah. Yeah, well, I guess I am the Messiah. Oh, they're all telling me I am. They're all telling me I'm awesome. I haven't had this kind of acceptance in a while. Yeah, I guess I am.
People listen when I speak.
I just don't get how you can be reading the same Bible that I've read and then come up with this stuff and then like even follow a guy with it like that's doing this. Oh, like, bro, you're looking at me and you're telling me that you're now that every woman belongs to you, that you're supposed to have sex with my wife, and people are like, for sure, you got her, bro.
Yeah, she's yours.
You just let me know when I'm good to come back in here.
Yeah.
I mean, matter of fact, you mind if I stay for a while?
Yeah. You mind if I watch?
Nope. We've already told you. No self-pleasure either in here. Get your tail out of there and go read.
You can't watch.
Yeah.
Go read.
Best thing for you. And you know what? The Lord is happy with your work. It's like, dang, bro.
Those tomatoes are going to grow themselves.
Yeah, come on, man. You got to eat, right?
Yeah. But the garden's 35 miles away.
Listen, we all have our purpose. We all have our role. Yours is to grow tomatoes. Mine is to please your wife. All right?
It's a 70-mile round trip.
Yeah.
Hey, man.
So is what we're about to be doing in here. You know what I mean? So let's go ahead and get a move on it.
Yeah, get on it, buddy. Can you use your truck at least?
I just filled it up with gas when you get back. There's only a quarter in there now. Go ahead and fill it up all the way. I'm doing you a favor here. Yeah.
his name change is actually key to this whole thing. I can't believe I forgot to even mention it. David is from, David, King David of Israel, the line of David,
Yeah.
Jesus, and Koresh means Cyrus the Great, who freed the Jews in the Babylonian captivity.
That's nuts.
So his name itself is like,
but it wasn't even his birth name. He had to change it to make it like that.
Bro. He had to change it, dude.
He had to change it to make it like that. So how many people, and we're going to continue to keep like going into different stories. So many messiahs have came that have led people astray. So many messiahs, but they all are corrupt.
Here's the craziest part to it all, going way back to his mom. His mom believes that he is who he says he is. His mom believes that her son is going to return one day as the Messiah. Isn't that crazy? His mom believes that. They're still in Waco, right? The Branch Davidians today. They're still in Waco on the compound, right?
Yeah.
Like they're actually on the property, I think.
Yeah.
So, man, if we ever make it out there, if this channel ever blows up, would you want to go interview him?
Oh, that'd be awesome.
Like,
that'd be incredible. Honestly, if this channel blew up, that's where I see it going. It's like doing stuff like that to where we're actually like getting to the people that we're so fascinated with trying to understand. We're like going to talk to them.
Yeah,
that's what I want. That's what I want to be. That's what I want to be doing at some point. But like, yeah, I would love to learn about their like. I would love to sit down with one of those people and talk to them.
It's like, first question: Why do you still believe this based off what happened? And just see what they say.
Yeah, like, dude, how do you have? They have more faith than I do. I don't got enough faith. I don't got enough faith. I can't do that.
That's
because like it's not logical at all. Like you literally have to abandon all common sense and logic to get behind that. Honestly, I'm interested for us to keep doing more and more of these episodes to see if there's any that don't have that.
Yeah,
seriously.
Yeah. No, yeah, I know.
Like just wait. Like some of these people, we're
gonna just wait, bro.
We're in Mormon faith. Ooh. We're gonna get into a lot of these different things. There's similarities in all these things. Just some are bigger than others. That's the only difference.
Power and control.
This is a very fascinating one for me.
This was interesting. I love this one just as much. Guys, do your own research on it, but I think we covered it pretty well. This is Deconstructed.
Well, that's the end of episode 2, David Koresh, Waco. Next week, you're not going to want to miss it. We're going to get into some crazy stuff next week. You have to come back and see. So look forward to seeing y'all.
See you guys.